In a time before social media and smartphones, capturing a moment in history often meant taking a photograph. And while technology has advanced dramatically over the years, these rare vintage photographs continue to offer us a direct glimpse into the past. Like these photographs of Sofia in 1912 by the famous Bulgarian photographer Dimitar Karastoyanov. We will take you to a very special place in the heart of the city of Sofia, very close to the offices of Student Computer Art Society, or SCAS. Many people walk by this place daily, but not a lot of people know what used to be here. After all, it looks like an empty lot filled by a small garden. Luckily for us, the vintage photographs we found and the people who preserved them throughout the years tell a very different story. This used to be the place of the remarkable confectionery, also known as the Writer's Cafe. This historic cafe was a popular gathering place for poets and artists, who would come here to share their works and ideas. This spot was an important meeting hub for the Bulgarian Artistic Society, and we have a lot of poems and artwork depicting it and its remarkable visitors. Groups of intellectuals would discuss the topics of the day here. Poets would write about the atmosphere of the room, and artists would observe and draw their remarkable contemporaries. Unfortunately, there are no photographs of the interior of the cafe. We can only imagine what it looked like based on the descriptions of those who visited it and this famous sketch by Alexander Dobrinov. Today, the cafe no longer exists, but thanks to these vintage photographs, we can still get a sense of what it was like. These rare vintage photographs may be the only remaining direct evidence of this historic cafe. Here are several reasons why it's so important to protect and digitize photographs. First, they are a valuable record of history and provide a unique glimpse into the past. By digitizing these photographs, we can preserve them for future generations to enjoy and learn from. Second, digitizing old photographs makes them more accessible. We can easily share them with others and even publish them online, making them available to a wider audience. Finally, digitizing old photographs helps to protect them from damage and degradation over time. By converting them to a digital format, we can ensure that they will remain safe and preserved for years to come. Additionally, digital restoration methods could be implemented to the more damaged photographs. This can help to maintain the historical accuracy of the photograph and preserve its value as a historical document. Thanks to the project Digital Restoration Laboratory, anyone who is interested in working with photographs and their digitized copies now has access to helpful resources, tools, and knowledge. From working and preserving the physical copies to more advanced knowledge about digitization, copyrights, and even how to implement artificial intelligence methods to help with the digital restoration of very damaged photographs. Access to all of this you can find on the project website.
Welcome to the National High School for Polygraphy and Photography in Sofia, a place where we train young professionals in the field of polygraphy, design, animation, library studies and photography. One of the aforementioned young professionals will now demonstrate how a faded family photo. A faded family photo can be transformed into an image that appears to be of modern quality with the help of digital restoration. This is Daria. She's going to show us the simple steps of digital restoration. Don't be alarmed by the oddly looking apparatus. This is a type of scanner with a camera attached to it. Alternatively, you can use a scanner or even the camera on your smartphone. She's now going to transfer the photo to a computer and commence with the digital restoration. Let's have a look at the photo. Ah yes, the yellow-brownish tint. Quite an eye-boggling discoloration caused by a fault, but nothing that can be repaired. With the help of Adobe Photoshop, one can achieve astonishing results. Try changing the colors to black and white, as it might change the whole mood of the photo. By adjusting the levels, curves and exposure, we can achieve a level of depth. The spot healing tool can repair a smaller area, but for this one, we would suggest you use the patch tool. You just select a part of the damaged area and move the selection to an undamaged one. As you can see, it still seems a bit odd. Even though the patch tool has an AI algorithm, it's still a bit tricky and you might notice some blurs, so it's a good idea to use the clone stamp brush. Basically, it copies an area and works as a brush. With its help, we're going to remove the defects more precisely. Additionally, you can try using some filters to reduce the noise or sharpen the whole image. Sharpen it just a bit. Last but not least, use the burn tool to retouch the faded areas to get that crisp final touch. Save it and voila! Alternatively, you can take on a different approach with an AI web-based software, such as Remini or Vance AI. You just upload the photo and the software's algorithm will do the work for you. The final outcome might have some minor imperfections, which might go unnoticed, but it all depends on the condition of the photo you're using. Keep in mind that photo restorations require many interpretive decisions, so careful judgment is a critical aspect of the whole process. You can now try out both methods and decide which one suits your needs.
Digitization has introduced new dimensions to the interplay between access and the preservation of cultural heritage materials in archives, libraries, and museums. Access and preservation are closely related but can sometimes be at odds when the state of original materials restricts their use. The relationship between access and preservation is particularly entangled in the case of film-based photographic materials, where fragile and difficult to access analog formats not only create barriers to use, but also pose preservation risks. Converting analog materials to digital format is only the first step in making historical sources accessible. Digitized versions provide access to visual content. Digitization de facto requires the indexing of visual resources and other non-textual materials at the item level. Sample of problems of digitalization. Of the given examples, physical operations with originals, correct preparation of images and metadata, and creation of digital collections are more important. Metadata contain information about image. The creation of metadata is complicated by the fragmentary description of photographic materials and the difficulty of geographical location. Metadata can contain information about the image author, title, possible keywords, copyright notices. Images can include metadata information about the camera used and shooting settings, as well as various other information.
All of this information should be in the files.
I think I know how to do it more conveniently. Let's see if it's in the file's metadata.
Oh, here it is.
Let's see if we can automize all of this.
Image captions can be created automatically using the information included in the metadata. This is especially important in works with a large number of images, such as encyclopedias. You must remember that this is only possible if the image contains metadata. Loss of data or data integrity and the fragility of digital media and the rapid obsolescence of software and computer systems, these are issues that affect digitization. Media fragility problem is then media can be damaged. The next problem are then media can be difficult to read due to lack of equipment. Whatever the storage medium, all digital records are at risk from loss or destruction for the following reasons: fragility of the digital media, poor environmental storage condition, lack of available technology and quality of the media.
Listen, we had the idea to transfer issues of the magazine ESPN Grafica to a digital format. We were given this disc that contains photos and layout. But how do we read it?
We need an old computer that still has a CD reader.
Obsolescence, continual changes to the original creating software and hardware, and the rapid obsolescence of digital technologies, have critical consequences for organizations.
It's a QXD file, a document that has been created using Quark Express 5 or earlier. Let's maybe try to open it in Adobe InDesign.
Yeah, maybe it can read the files.
A number of steps should be taken to mitigate the risks of losing access to digital data, such as refreshing, upgrading storage media, migration and emulation. Some of these actions ensure data preservation, some solve access problems that arise during software development. General principles of any digital records preservation strategy must be feasible. It must be based on the availability of hardware and software capable of supporting the implementation of the strategy. Sustainable. It must be capable of being applied indefinitely into the future. Practical. Its implementation must be within reasonable limits of difficulty and expense. Appropriate. It must be relevant to the types of records and metadata to be preserved.
This part of the film for the Erasmus Digital Restoration Lab project examines criteria when selecting artefacts for digitization, copyright and digitization. The cultural heritage of the picturesque province of Bartın in North Turkey on the western Black Sea coast is used for the scenario and to provide examples using vintage photographs. Barton-born researcher Chetin Asma is synonymous with Barton's cultural heritage and has been collecting artefacts from and of Barton since 1967. Asma owns several thousand photographs of Barton that offer unique insights into Barton's social history, customs and traditions from the 1920s until recently. Barton Municipality has worked with Chetin Asma to digitise a few thousand of these valuable original photographs. As you take a journey through time, enjoying the well-known sights of Barton, such as the therein Fountain, Dervisholu Inn, and Asma Bridge, and the old hospital as pictured in the 1930s, and today, let's talk about the criteria for digitisation. When should a small archive or library digitise their collections? The answer is only after careful consideration, as several factors need to be taken into consideration. First and foremost, an evaluation of user expectation and conservation issues should be carried out. For example, do you want to ensure continued access to copies of originals of fragile artefacts versus providing improved access to unknown or little used collections, offering better search and retrieval facilities for a collection, and providing a greater understanding of original works through improved indexing or some form of digital enhancement? There's always the option to carry out a feasibility study for digitisation if a collection or series of artefacts are to be digitised. A feasibility study assesses user needs versus budgetary implications. However, the fact that artefacts are damaged should make them a priority for digitisation. This is because of the risk of fragmentation. Damaged artefacts that can warrant priority are those that have been subject to colour shifting, graininess, and agents of deterioration, etc. Ultimately, digital transformation requires organisations to move with the times. So the best case scenario is if the digitisation of artefacts enhances the user experience and ensures that your library or archive has increased online presence. However, each digitisation project requires the development of a detailed digitisation strategy after the completion of the feasibility study to justify the project to management and stakeholders. Here we have some photographs that give us an interesting insight into the social life and customs of women in particular that lived in Barton decades ago. Barton's first female pharmacist, Sevilir Kadırga, dating from 1964, and coming-of-age photographs of Barton women dating from approximately the 1930s, and several other photographs of couples and bridal pictures. Digitisation is the first step towards digital restoration. Here we can see some basic examples of digital restoration using fading and damage correction techniques. We have a digitally restored photograph of the Turkish Agricultural Bank, landscape photographs, a photograph of the Asma Bridge, and a panoramic photo of Barton. Here we have some damaged pages of the iconic Barton newspaper dating from 1938 that is part of Barton Municipality's digitisation project, a vintage photograph of a magician visiting Barton dating from 1941, and photographs of politicians visiting Barton throughout the years. The copyright of the photographs used in this section and in the digitisation project by Barton Municipality belongs to Chetin Asma. Before you embark on a digitisation project, you should always verify the copyright of the artefacts and settle any anomalies beforehand. Generally speaking, the person who creates an image, i.e. the creator, will generally be the first owner of the copyright. This is also the case with the Turkish intellectual and artistic works law. Registration is not required for copyright ownership in line with Turkish legislation, as the rights on intellectual and artistic works begin with the production of the work. However, copyright is not always a straightforward issue, especially with regard to digitised images. Just creating a copy of an image won't result in a new copyright. However, there is some uncertainty regarding whether copyright can exist in digitised copies of older images for which copyright has expired. Some argue that a new copyright may arise in such copies if specialist skills have been used to apply digital restoration, such as optimising detail, and/or the original image has been digitally restored to remove blemishes, stains, or creases. We would like to finish this section of the film by showing photographs throughout the decade of the famous Gala Market in Barton. where female villagers still gather to sell their produce.
Bulgaria is the third country in Europe by total number of cultural and historical documents, and one of the most important problems is their preservation and restoration. The task set for the Bulgarian culture by the present time is urgent, because the preservation of the cultural legacy is a serious problem which cannot be postponed. That's why the aims of the laboratory are expansion and acceleration of the process of digitization of valuable and jeopardized documents, which have proven scientific, historical and educational values, and ensuring wider access to these documents through direct restoration, intervention and training students in the field. A large number of manuscripts, old printed books, unique archival documents, the portrait collection, original graphics, periodicals, maps and paintings have all been damaged as a result of heavy use in previous years. Some of them cannot be digitized before restoring or applying conservation procedures. The stages of conservation and restoration of different written artifacts are different. The approach is strictly individual. The stages of restoration and preservation of valuable, rare printed books before digitization are disinfection, chemical analysis of the paper and inks, mechanical cleaning, stabilization of entries and notes with cyclododecaine, aqueous cleaning, deacidification, drying after aqueous cleaning and deacidification, strengthening of the paper and inks, restoration, humidification, flattening, binding, followed by digitization. Our ambition and final goal is to establish the University of Library Studies and Information Technologies as a leading national institution on conservation as well as popularization and research of the book heritage. Achieving the necessary technological level, it is very important for us to be leaders in the activity to the expansion of the national program of digitization of the cultural legacy of Bulgaria. Only then will we achieve these two diametrically opposed but interdependent missions: access and conservation.
Old photos are truly a journey back in time. You know people's faces, see their clothes, learn about buildings that no longer exist, discover devices from the past. You have in front of you a piece of the past. Beyond the images, there are their stories. One of these stories could be yours. And digital restoration and other innovative techniques, such as photogrammetry, video and 3D mapping, augmented reality, virtual reality and artificial intelligence, bring old photos and their stories back to life. The film is about old photographs and their new life thanks to digital innovation in the Digital Restoration Lab project. Careful physical restoration is a sustainable digital information management, assure the security, integrity and the access to the images. Along with their digital restoration, the photos can be highlighted in online exhibitions, shared on social media or even be the basis of some educational games. The Brasov County Library keeps old and new photos in its collection along with books, documents, audio recordings, etc. In the library's collection, photo albums, individual, family and group portraits, illustrated postcards show us the life of the city and its inhabitants at different stages. Photographs are fragile documents that must be carefully kept and preserved. The example of digitization, the transposition of the analog signals into digital ones, would have been some time ago, a statement probably subject to doubt, but innovative techniques make digital restoration an inexhaustible subject. 3D virtual reality manages to keep the memorial and historical culture actual without contaminating its essence and succeeding through techniques from different fields to recreate it, most of the time identical from all points of view. The Brasov County Library brings to the public cultural projects containing a large range of diversity. Thus, a diary with the laborious research work behind it becomes an interesting and instructive informative journey about distant historical periods, revealing to the reader not only aspects of life from another age, but also sound and artistic image, all being part of the same innovative project. How does it start? Through reading a carefully selected database that fits happily with the era described in Valeriu Braniște's diary. The search itself is a process that involves a whole series of knowledge, of visual and of terminology from the most diverse fields, starting with clothing, daily life, interhuman relations and reaching the latest insights from the technological world and the socio-economic register of that time. For the classic way in which the subject was treated, that of the drawing, the reference is found and we move on into its fulfillment. Layers of image related to the composition of the subject itself are brought and drawn one by one. Once the picture box is finished, it is brought into the editing software when it is given the last details and the best possible representation is sought for the volume editing. The software used is a part of what is called the world of digitization. Even if a volume of drawings does not seem to be an integral part of endeavor. Along with sound, computer techniques and technical information, a QR placed in the album makes you part of the diary, which works on all kinds of apps from mobile phones to tablets. Project of this kind went further. An equally broad example is a volume of recent history where the information base is large and more precise, so as not to create or mislead the reading public with untrue information. If 3D mapping and reality created by CGI work with the material, the text works with the human consciousness, and this aspect deserves to be treated professionally, calling on databases from specialized institutions. Digital technology, although at first glance it seems not to exist in comics, is present and it is imposed by technical objective reasons. After the searching characters and locations databases, and after a thorough search of a certain event, we move on to create a composition by following some principles related to the artistic interpretation. Layers and effects of digital technology are used with the help of a graphics card with an enormous area of use, from a simple simulation in the virtual engineering of 3D modeling and virtual editing. In conclusion, the success of such an approach depends on three factors: information, the truthful of the reconstruction, and the artistic element.